It's epidemic in this culture. Right? So that's a volatile mixture of fear, anxiety, that almost epidemic sense of there's something wrong at the core of me. I'm never enough. That sense of, sometimes it's a sense of shame, different things, always trying to fill up a void. It's like you're trying to feed something that has no bottom to its stomach. No matter how much you give it, it's never enough. No matter how much praise, success, love, accomplishment, it just goes in and just seems to fall right out the bottom. Right? And so instead of going away from that, you're actually allowing yourself experientially to come back into it. Right? And of course, what the fear orbits around, experientially now, our fear, our anxiety, our shame, our feelings of inadequacy, all of that, it all orbits around the same thing. When what it's orbiting around essentially is at the very core of the ego structure is a void. There's nothing there. It's an absolute empty void. Everybody's running away from that void. Everybody does it in their own unique way, but almost everybody's running away from that. They interpret it as inadequacy, or they interpret it as something scary, or they interpret it as, if I just accomplish enough, I won't feel this sense, this void in the center of my being. In a certain sense, this feeling of non-being right in the center of me. If I do something correctly, I won't feel like I'm an imposter. But what that void reminds you of is that void at the center of the ego structure. It always reminds you that the ego is an imposter. That's why it never feels adequate. That's why it never feels totally good enough. That is why no matter what it accomplishes, it will never really be enough, because it's not genuine. It's not what you are. And since it's not what you are, how can it ever feel anything ultimately in its secret heart of hearts but inadequate, but anxious? Right? Because it's holding a secret. And the secret is that at the center of my ego structure, the center of my sense of self, is this sense of fraudulency. And so we feel fear about that. We move away from it. We spiritualize it. We try to become very spiritual and nice and compassionate in so many ways that we're trying to make up for that emptiness. And yet the only way to freedom is right through the center of that. That's the doorway. The doorway is there for everybody, but it's not the doorway that anybody wants. It's not the doorway that anybody expects. They expect the doorway to be blissful and happy with angels and choirs ushering them into the blissful union with the beloved. And when they get to the door, it's this open, hideous void that questions your very existence, that shows a mirror up against all that you've pretended to be, all that you're pretending to be. It shines, it's just like this, that void is also kind of like a perfect mirror. And then when you look in that mirror, what you see feels inauthentic. That's why we run away from it. It doesn't feel inauthentic because there's something essentially wrong with you. It feels authentic, however, because it actually is inauthentic. It feels unworthy because it is unworthy of being what you are. It's not really what you are. So how could it feel anything but authentic? And so when we open to that, we stop running away from that. As you experientially go into that place within you, it strips you of everything, right? Doesn't it? It's easier for a camel to pass through an eye of a needle than a rich man to get into heaven, as it says in the good book. Which is a way of saying, you want to get into the truth of your being, everything, as you go there, everything will be stripped away. Every definition, everything you held on to, all the good parts of you, all the bad parts, all the things that you want to identify with, as well as the things you don't want to identify with, everything will be stripped away as you go into that. You know, most people at some point they'll run back out as fast as they can. But you'll be stripped. You'll be stripped down as you go into it. You'll be stripped down so much that you feel like nothing. At that moment, it's very often that people's mind will then start to tell a story down there, and that when they're getting really deep into that, they'll tell the story. Oh, it has no meaning, no significance. What's life all about? Do you know what I mean? There's no point to it. But these are just stories that people tell in the void. Do you know? That's all they are. They're just the mind trying to make sense. Do you know, of something that can never make sense, something that can never comprehend. And so eventually you start to relinquish the stories. Because as strange as it sounds, the only way to come fully into your being is by absolutely not knowing who you are, not knowing what you are. That's the way. As long as we know, we're still treading water. We're just still on the surface of that void at the best. Do you know? Even if we define ourselves spiritually, you know, I am consciousness. Well, not if you don't know that. It doesn't help you. It's just a new identity unless you've been stripped all the way. Do you know? So even all the spiritual stuff will be taken away, right? All the beliefs, all of it will go if you really just let yourself go there. And it may be scary, it may be disorienting. Who knows? It may be just fine. But only then do you discover yourself more as a presence than limited by your personality structure. Your personality structure is something that your presence operates through. You know, it's what it operates through. It's the mask it uses. It's the costume that it wears to operate. And by the way, it's only your mind that has an argument with the mask that you wear. Did you get a sense of that?
Yeah.
That's the way, though. Because when you really let yourself go into that journey, and by the way, everything that I'm saying will happen when and if you stop doing. I mean, even just here, I don't mean you don't do anything in your life, but I mean psychologically, here, while you're here, if you stop doing, this will naturally start to happen. True awakening is a completely natural process. We think we have to do some god-awful, unnatural thing to make something extraordinary happen. We don't. It's as natural as breathing. All you have to do is stop struggling against it. Stop pushing against it. Nobody needs to know, how do I do it? All you need to know how is to not do what you're currently doing. You know what I mean? And then it knows how to do it itself. Everything will happen when you let yourself really sort of be stripped.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. then of course you come upon, as I said, and this is just a manner of speaking, but you awaken not so much as a person, but as a presence that's appearing as a person, which, by the way, doesn't have any problem with a person. And if we really let that happen, you know that it's really happened in full measure. It's a very simple thing. You know that it's happened in full measure because there's no division in you, psychologically. There's no division. Because that nothing is opposed. You are not opposed to yourself. That's one meaning of non-division. You're not opposed to yourself. The only thing that's not going to be opposed to yourself is your true nature, your true self. Everything else will be opposed in some manner, at some level. Come on up, my friend.